Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings.
Animation on a big scale is a very collaborative process. And if you open yourself up to that and let it happen, it's amazing what can come out of that.
Welcome back to the Pencil Kings podcast. I'm really excited today. We're going to be talking with Brenda Chapman, who you can find her at brenda-chapman.com. And her film credits list is pretty much the who's who of animated and 3D films. So there's a ton of stuff that she's done. And but to start off, why don't we just let her talk? And could you give us a sort of a 1-minute overview? I feel like that's not enough time, but just a brief overview of some of the things you've done and where you're at right now, because it's a lot, and I'm excited to dive into your story.
Okay. Well, I started out by going to school at Cal Arts back in the 80s. I'm so old. My first job was while I was still working there. I did some work on Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. It was an old syndicated TV show for DIC. And then I started as a story trainee at Disney, and I worked at Disney for 8 years as a story artist, and I was head of story on The Lion King. Then I left to help start DreamWorks Animation with Jeffrey Katzenberg, where I directed The Prince of Egypt, co-directed with Simon Wells and Steve Fichtner. And then I moved on. After that, I had a child and then took some time off, and then I moved on to Pixar, where I worked on Cars as a senior story artist briefly, and then I wrote and created and directed the movie Brave. And I've consulted on many projects for Universal, Sony, Lucasfilm, Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, but I just finished writing an adaptation of a Chinese folktale, and I will be directing that. And my husband and I are starting up a new company where we will be directing and writing projects and trying to sell them. So we'll see. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's so cool. And what I really like about the work that you've done, especially, well, now where you're at, is that you're writing and creating and actually seeing these projects come to light. And I know that that's something that a lot of people who are listening want to do. They have a story that they want to tell. And there's something that I found recently that people, they want the accolades, or they want to see their work on the big screen, or if it's for a video game on a console, like they want to have that feeling of accomplishment that people are actually seeing their work versus making a webcomic and putting it up and then having your mom and your brother or whoever, give you a like. So there's something with fulfillment that comes from working on a bigger project. And I want to go back to the beginning. And I guess the first question that I have is it something that it's just you have to pay your dues, and there's no length of time that says like your dues are paid after X amount of years, but you don't start with your story and then seeing it on the big screen. Like that's sort of like a 10-year plus plan that you meet the right people, you've proven yourself consistently, and then you're at a place where now you can start to put forward your projects and people will listen to you and you can get the funding that you need to do it. Because for me, I tried to shortcut it with video games. I tried making my own video game. It's very difficult. We had no budget. Nobody ever saw it because it was never done. And it just kind of died on the vine. So I'm curious what advice you have for people who want to tell these big stories, and what's kind of like a realistic progression that they could go through where they could, have the 10-year or whatever it is goal to see their story or their creation come to life on the big screen.
Well, there are many different ways to try to do that. The industry has changed so much since I started that it's I don't know if the way I went is always the way you're going to be able to do it. And a lot of everybody's success counts on being at the right place at the right time. So there's a little bit of luck involved as well. But hard work never does you wrong. So yeah, I just find a lot of young people right now want to, be a director or producer like in a month once they start working, and that's just not realistic. So here's the deal with the big studios. The chances are getting slimmer and slimmer that you will get your own story up on the big screen, because they are right now in the process of wanting to do known properties. So that's why you see so many sequels and so many projects that look the same as other projects. And they might put one original one out there once in a while, but they really count on them being able to do sequels to make the money, because the harsh reality for me was learning that the animation business is a business. We are the creatives, and we do our best to put our passion and what we want in there, and for people to see what we do and all of that. But you have to work within that system when you work for the big studios. That said, there are other routes starting to happen with independent financing. Like Chinese money is really starting to pour into Hollywood, and independent filmmaking is getting a little bit easier because the technology is more accessible. And you have film festivals like over the world, especially. I just got back from Annecy in France. That's an amazing one. So it's hard to get your own story out there. I was very fortunate, but also very unfortunate. I mean, if you know the story of what happened, that I was taken off like near the end of the film and someone else came on, Brave. That story, which is my baby and was inspired by my daughter, just belongs to Pixar, and I have no more connection with it. I have nothing to do with it anymore, other than I'm very proud of the film, and I can point at that and say that was for my daughter and all of that. But it's hard to get your own work out there at a big studio anymore. I don't mean to be a negative Nelly here, because right now I am working on a film that I've written. It's based on a folktale, and I'm working through a Chinese company who wants to animate it here in the States or in Canada. And so I'm going down a whole different path now, and I think different paths are more available than they were when I started out.
Well, I think that's just really great advice, because you sit as a viewer and you see the thing on screen. You're like, wow, I want to do something like that, and I've got this idea. But then there's the reality, like you're talking about, that at the end of the day, these things have to make money. Otherwise, they can't make any more of them. And so the easy way to do that is to build on an existing franchise's success. So Frozen 2, or Finding Nemo, mm-hmm. Finding Dory.
Cars, yeah. Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit, I guess, about starting your own production company? I'm not sure at which stage you're at and how much you can say, but I think it's really interesting, all the opportunities like you're talking about of finding other financing where you can have more control, because I feel like maybe the big studio game isn't as accessible as we would like it to be, but as creatives, we're living in this amazing time where we can do so much, and a lot of the walls that used to be there, they've been broken down, and so it is actually within our grasp to do something. It might not have the national, worldwide box office opening that a big studio would have, but you can still get your work. You can still take it to an extremely high level.
Yes, and and the internet has given us a lot of that too. There are YouTube sensations out there. But for me, this is all new. I've been a studio gal most of my career, and having pipelines already set up. The infrastructure is there. I don't have to worry about the business aspect. That's been the most challenging for my husband and I. But basically, if you have a good idea and you want to get it out there, start writing it up, start drawing it up, start being able to put it in a format that you can pitch it to other people. You can show people to get their interest, to help you finance it. Write a synopsis, like a one-page synopsis, or, you can write a 20-page outline, or if you really are just really into it, write the script. And then, but it's always helpful to be drawing at the same time. If you have, if you are able to do that, draw a beat board, which are, it's basically taking the outline and for each beat of the outline, you draw a picture or do a painting or something that sort of gives you the flavor of what you want to do with the film. And then, you can do a Kickstarter. You can go out to people, if you know people in the industry, they might be able to point you at a producer who can help you get money, or there are so many different ways to look at it. For our company, we are looking at several different options, but right now, because I'm doing this Chinese project, this Chinese company is very interested in what Kevin and I are going to be doing. My husband is Kevin Lima, who directed Enchanted and Tarzan and a Goofy movie. So we're a team now, which we haven't been before. So we thought we'd pool our resources to see if we could get some backing. So I think the thing is, you have to have something to show before you can go out there and try to get some funding. You can't just say, I have this idea. Will you give me some money to do it? You actually need to sit down and put some work into it and know that you're not going to get paid for that work. The other thing, if you do want to work at the big studios, because I totally get that. I wanted to work at Disney so bad. I just wanted to work on their movies. I was happy to be a story artist working on the projects that they wanted to throw at me. But as I did that, I grew to really have my own ideas and what I would do with the film, watching other directors and how they handled a story. I thought, wow, I would maybe do that a little different. And so I wanted to maybe even just do a movie that they had, but I would do it my own way. There are ways to do that, to train yourself, to learn the process and to really, get some seasoning before you take on a full-on film of your own. So, there are still ways to do that. But, I think a lot of people actually do find joy in doing their part on one of those big films. So you may go in with the big ideas, I want to do my own stuff, but then you go in and go, no, this is really fun. And you'd be surprised how much you learn from your colleagues with the collaboration. And I still highly recommend working someplace like that before you go out and do your own thing, because it will give you such a rich knowledge and experience, and it will only make your own film better when you actually do get to do it. Did that answer your question? I'm rambling, I think, a little bit.
No, I think it's all good. And I'm just a little bit giddy here that I get to talk to somebody who's worked on so many different projects and get to ask these questions that I hope are really helpful for the people that want to tell these bigger stories. The next question that I'd like to ask is, in talking with people, I see that there's this belief of where your drawing abilities need to be in order to tell your story. And it's kind of weird because on one side, I feel like your drawing skills should be extremely high. But then on the other hand, I know, having been in production, that there's so many different people that touch a project. So even though you may come up with, it could even be on a napkin, like I feel like it, and please do, I want your insight on this. But my feeling is that your drawing skills don't have to be as high as you may think they do in order to get your idea across to the point where it's more about the story and sort of the world that you're creating. And then there are other people that you can hand it off to, because it's not just all you. You're not responsible for everything. And they're the ones who can see that idea and see what you're trying to get and then add in their own flavor to it and continue to develop it and collaborate on it and make it into something that's even bigger and better than you could have originally conceived.
Yes. When I was growing up at Disney, your drawing skill just had to be where you could emote with the characters and make the business clear. So you could be doing 2 dots for eyes and a circle, and just, put a bow on the head if it was the, a bell or whatever. But as long as you felt something, and it was very clear to the audience, the people, the filmmakers watching it, what you were getting across, then yes. I mean, if you could have seen Gary Trousdale's drawings or my drawings, I think I was probably the weakest draftsman on the team, but I could emote with my drawings. The differences today, especially in the CG aspect of storyboarding, is that back in traditional animation, you had a layout team that did this process called workbook, which would take the workbook artist would take the storyboards and analyze them, and then stage them if the staging needed to be plussed, or scenes needed to be combined or cut apart. And basically he would do a cinematography pass, and scene cutting pass, whether it needed to be a camera move or a cut or what it needed to be. They would plan that out. And so the story artist's drawing could be very simple and just concentrate on the character and the business and not worry about the camera. Now with CG, the layout department doesn't really have that workbook part of it anymore. And so the story artist is left to do that. And so the draftsmanship on a CG film for a story artist is actually, to get a job, they really look for your ability to use a camera, of your cinematography. I'm trying to find the word, but it's not coming to me. You do need to have a little more ability there. I often think, boy, I don't know that I'd be able to get a job as a story artist anymore, because I don't think I would have had the chops to do that. I always counted on the layout department. I would go to them sometimes, so I'd make it really clear what I wanted to do. If I needed the camera to support what I was doing, I would go to Ed Gertner or Dan St. Pierre or Larry Leaker, whoever was doing the workbook or the layout of that scene, and I'd say, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, and they maybe give me a rough sketch that I could then translate into the boards and help me with that. But yes, on the other hand, if you're able to get an idea across and then someone else takes it and runs with it, and blows it up to, better draftsmanship, better drawing or whatever, yeah, I think it's important. And, a smart director and smart story heads will recognize that, and see the value in that and still bring you on. It's just a little bit harder to do that if your draftsmanship isn't quite what it needs to be. An example of that on Lion King was I was boarding the Mufasa's ghost sequence, and I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted Mufasa to come rolling out of these clouds, and I wanted, this and that, but I just didn't have the ability to draw it to the magnificence that I knew it could be. So I was working really late one night, and Chris Sanders, who was art directing at the time, and I had boarded with him in the past, I went to him and I said, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you think, can you maybe help me with this? Because I just can't get it to look right. And then I don't know if you've seen these incredible pastel drawings of his in the Lion King art book, but he did these amazing drawings of Mufasa rolling out of the clouds and walking forward. And so he took my idea and really plussed it with his visuals, but yet it was something I brought to the table. And I had my little ugly sketches to prove it, but his stuff was amazing. And then because he got excited about that whole scene, and I was pitching what I was doing with it, then he got excited and he thought of a piece of music that he thought would go really well with it, which was Ennio Morricone's The Mission. There's a really heart-wrenching oboe piece in there, and that builds into a full orchestra that is just beautiful. So after he and I worked on it for a couple of days together, I pitched it to the directors, and I was so concentrating on the boards. And while I was pitching, Chris pushed the button on the tape player to play that song while I was that piece of music. And then when I was done, I turned around, there were tears rolling down the cheeks of both directors. So I was like, it worked. So that's to me the beauty of collaboration. and being open to other people's ideas. Chris was very open to what I was wanting to do, and I was very open to what he brought, the amazing stuff he did with it and the music. It just, the two of us together really, made something that felt right for the film. So, yeah, I'm babbling again.
No, it's good. And I think like I just try to impress upon people who are starting out, like this idea that you don't have to do it all yourself. Like there's something with you come to the table with an idea, or maybe you come to the table with a story or something that you want to make, but then other people are going to help you build that vision. And that if you think that it's just you against the world, it's a very, very difficult road. And that's not how things are really made. I would say 99.9% of the time. There's the odd person who can do all the things and do it well, but they're special.
Yeah.
They're different than most other people in the reality of production.
Right. And and like Bill Plimpton is one of those people. He does all of his own weird little films that are really fascinating and amazing, and I love them. But that's, like you say, a very rare bird that can do that. And animation on a big scale is a very collaborative process. And if you open yourself up to that and let it happen, it's amazing what can come out of that.
I want to change gears a little bit because we're going to do our best to find links to everyone that you've mentioned so far. There's so many people, and I'm amazed at how many people's names you can remember just off the top of your head and all these references. And so I want to talk about the value of network, because I think this is another piece of the puzzle that's often not talked about, that how important your network is and having friends, keeping in touch with these people. What I wanted to talk about was the idea of network, and that it's not just a solo journey. And this is something that people aren't talking about as much as I think, compared to the importance of it.
Yeah.
That these people can help bring you up, further you, help you develop something, give you critiques when you're down. They can help you push through the bad times. What advice do you have for people in building a network, or establishing a network, or fostering a network, just anything about network? Because it's so important. And all the people that you named, I feel like this is something that, I don't know if it's conscious or unconscious for you, but it's a very important part of any artist's career.
Well, I think that was just the natural progress for me at CalArts. We all leaned on each other. I'm not sure how it is today, but back in the 80s when I went, we had these wonderful teachers that sort of the old guys from Disney that were slowly dying off. And, they were retired and they weren't there all the time. So the upperclassmen really helped the newer students. And then as the newer students became the upperclassmen, they'd turn around and do that too. So you learn collaboration, you learn to go to people for help, you learn to help people. And it was incredible. So when I went to Disney as a trainee, that was just part of the culture of what I was learning. I would go to people to mentor me, and people would volunteer, like Roger Allers was my main mentor, but so was Ed Gombert and Tom Enriquez and Gary Trousdale. And, I had these wonderful people who were willing to, show me the ropes and, offer comments on my ideas. And before we'd even show directors our work, we would show each other and practice pitching and, get their opinions. It's really important to get that objective point of view on your work. You can get so, close to it that you're not seeing maybe the big flaw or the big possibility of making it better, So it's really important to find those people that you respect their work, or you feel comfortable with them, or even the people that you cringe because you know they're just going to rip it apart, but you know that they're going to rip it apart in a way that it needs to be ripped apart. Having the courage to go, okay, I know this isn't working, but that person will be honest with me. So as much as I'm going to hate to hear it, they will be honest. So you just have to find those people that do that for you and be willing to give that back in return. On Beauty and the Beast, Roger Allers and I shared an office. He was head of story. And I think that's where I started realizing, hey, you know what? I might be able to do this, down, the next couple of projects. But we would sit across the room and we'd be working on our sketches. And then one of us would just hold up the sketch and go, does this read? Does this look right? And because back in those days to pitch, you didn't have the screen. You had to make sure you're drawing red from across the room. So, you'd hold it up, does this read? And we would tell each other, it's like, oh, you should do this, or no, that looks great, or whatever. But it's just that openness, that naturalness of sharing your work, not being afraid to show it to other people and taking that all in.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I really liked actually what you said about being willing to show your work to the person that's going to rip it apart, but you appreciate their honesty. And that's the relationship that even though it might hurt or it might be hard to take that criticism, you see the value in it and you know that it's not personal. That person is doing that to make you the best that you can be. And you take it as that.
Right. Absolutely. And, as far as moving forward with your work, that's I think the most important element, because then when you go to, if you have your own idea and your own project, if you have an idea at a bigger studio and you want to put it forward, you'll have the confidence of having had other people look at it and help you get it to the best it can be to that point. And you will know, no, this just isn't me. The other people are in agreement. This is a good idea or a good place to be with it, to pitch it. And just slightly off topic, just a cautionary tale is know that once you pitch your own idea at a bigger studio like Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Sony, Fox, they will own it immediately, because that's something every studio makes you sign, is any idea you come up with while you're working for them belongs to them. So just know that that is the danger of pitching a project at a bigger studio. It will no longer be yours. And if they decide they don't want you working on it anymore, they can take you off and give it to someone else. So just beware. That is what happens a lot. Some people get to see it all the way through, others don't, and or just get to work on it as a story artist and somebody else takes it. So that's slightly off topic, but I'm just throwing that out there. But if you want to take that project and you're not working at a bigger studio, but you're working, on your own, but you have friends come and look at it that you respect, then you find a producer that you like, that you respect their work, or someone who's more on the business end of things, and ask them if you think they could help you raise the money for it and get it going. Or you can put together your own team, do a Kickstarter, try to get funds that way, and then do it on it's a smaller scale. Kickstarter, you're not going to quite get the kind of money you could if you get someone who would go out and help you raise the money that is experienced with that. But you may end up having to share some of the financial burden with them, but in the end, if it pays off, then depending on where you show it and how it gets out there, and some festivals will pay you to show your film. Other festivals, you have to pay them to show your film. It's kind of crazy, but then, and it's an aspect that I'm still kind of ignorant of. I'm very old school, but the whole internet aspect of doing your own work and putting it out there, you can I know there are ways to get financing through the internet and have advertisers pay to advertise on your site where you're showing your work, and that's how you make some money. I'm totally going off the top of my head here because I don't know that aspect of it as much, but I know there are a lot of people out there who do that, so there must be some way to make money at that.
Yeah, we're going through this right now with a short film called Mila, and kind of watching the how they're raising money for their short and how that's going online. And what I found that it's quite difficult to get funding for the arts. Like you need with the whole social media crowdfunding things, it's like people want the actual product. And when you're doing a work of art, which I would say a film is a work of art,
Yes, it is.
uh, it becomes difficult because it's like you're going to get to watch the film no matter what. But if you're doing something like all the maquettes or the statues or the figurines from the film,
Uh-huh.
that's something that people want. And they're like, oh, I want that character design on my desk, painted. Yes, I will buy that. But when you're just saying like help fund the film, it becomes a little bit more fuzzy. Well, I guess one last question that I have. I know you speak a lot and that you set aside part of your time to talk with students and people who are coming into the industry. What's one big piece of advice that you find yourself giving over and over again to these people that we could just also have on our podcast so it's out here through our platform as well?
The biggest piece of advice that I give across the board is that while you're in school or you are doing your own work before you get out into the workforce, just embrace that and work hard and do the best you can with that, because for a while you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be working for someone else to make the money and working on other people's projects and other people's passion projects or a studio's passion project. Just really throw yourself into your student films, your own personal work, and savor that and make the best stuff you can, because that memory and that tactile feeling of doing that is going to go with you into your professional life. And it also will give you that drive to want to do it again, and you'll find another way to do it. So just be true to your own vision of things while still being professional in the work that you're doing and helping create someone else's vision. Is that clear as mud?
Yeah, I think so. Having having heard this now and gone through the student experience, I feel that I could have it would have been useful for somebody to sit me down and say like, look, this is a special time in your life where there are no limits, there's no constraints, there's no bad ideas, there's no budget constraints. You just do you. You do what
Exactly.
you can do it the best that you can, and realize that it might be a while before you can get back to this place where you can direct things, where you can say, where your voice matters, that you're going to go through a period of people telling you what to do, and it will still be fun and you'll be part of the creative process, but you're not going to be the one in charge. And so savor that moment and really make it count. Learn all that you can, because though you don't know it at the time, it's laying the foundation so that if you do want to step into that more director role, you will have laid the foundation. You'll have understood a lot of things as a student, even if you're not conscious of it.
Right.
You're learning so much, and just have a blast with it.
Right. You said that so much better than I did. Yes. That's exactly it. And the other piece of advice I always give them is that when you are doing someone else's project, when you are working on someone else's work, find that thing. There's always that little tiny thing that you can feel passionate about in the job that you are doing on that project, and give it your all. Because if you can't find that little piece of passion, then it's going to be not a very fun road, and you're not going to be able to give your best work. Even if it's just like, you know what, I love the way I draw those eyes, or I love the way I've designed my part of the character, or that little bit of story, it's like I can just plus it with this, or I really like that aspect of the story, so I'm really going to help to keep that strong. just find that little tiny thing that makes you really want to work on it. Sometimes you just love the idea of the whole film, and that's great. But sometimes you might find yourself on a film that you're like, this really isn't me, or I don't really. You got to find something, and it will be there. You just have to be open to finding it.
I love that. And there's always something, just like you said, there's something that you can take ownership of and take pride of. And it could even just be your coworkers. It could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be the work. It could be your environment.
Exactly.
But when you get to that point where you feel like you're stuck or you're not enjoying it, that's when you're kind of in the danger zone.
Right. Right. When there's nothing that, when you find yourself not wanting to get up to go to work, that's not good.
Well, that's all I had for questions. Anything that you want to add before I would love for you to tell us some of the best places to find you online, because I know there's several different ones. But yeah, this is your time. Anything else that you want to add? Otherwise, we can wrap up with some links for people, and we'll be done.
Well, one thing is my site, I haven't really done anything with it in a couple of years, but it still has, if you haven't seen it before, I've put a lot of advice on there. People have written and asked me questions, and I've tried to answer them so that other people can get something out of it. But one of the things I would like to bring up, as I have just been to the Annecy Film Festival, and in Europe, they're much more individual styles there, as opposed to trying to work towards a studio style. There's a lot of different looking types of animation going on. And as Americans, if we don't get to travel to Annecy and all those places, and it's not always online, you can't always get access, it's difficult to see that and sort of broaden our horizons. And one thing I'd like to encourage everybody who has a few extra pennies, if they could, is get onto Ron Diamond's Kickstarter for Animation Show of Shows and donate, because he puts together this big show of animation shorts from around the world, which include American shorts. But it's just a wonderful place where you can sort of broaden your own horizons by looking at what the world is doing out there in animation, and my hope is that we will see those things and want to bring a little of that home here to America and freshen up our animation storytelling as well. So, but he's struggling, and it would be great if everyone who takes a look at it could help out just a little bit. I highly recommend it, because if it doesn't happen, it's going to be a big loss to all of us.
All right. Well, we'll definitely get the links there and include those with the show notes. So for those of you listening, I'd encourage you to head over to pencilkings.com/podcast, because Brenda mentioned a lot of different artists in this interview. We're going to do our best to dig up everyone's links to their Instagram or wherever they are online, so you can take a look at some of the artwork that they're doing, which I'm sure is going to be amazing across the board, as well as Brenda's site and the Kickstarter. So it'll all be there, easy for you to go and click and look around. And I also encourage you to go and support the arts. You don't have to support every single thing that comes through, but every little bit that we can all do as a community helps bring forward this amazing art form of animation and comics and all the things that we're listening to and talking about on this podcast. So yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you so much, Brenda. I really appreciate it. And this has been an awesome interview.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.